In this video lecture, I'm going to solve the next 10 questions, question 51 to question number 60. So let's start. Question 51. VSI lag is reduced by what? Now, what is VSI lag? Vertical speed indicator lag. To lag means to fall behind something. Now, whenever you climb, let's say you're flying straight and level at 5,000 feet, and you initiate a climb to go to a new level of 6,000 feet. So whenever you initiate a climb, you enter a pitch attitude, a climbing attitude, and in begin your climb, the vertical speed indicator will lag or it will fall behind in time. Meaning, as soon as you initiate a climb at 300 feet per minute, let's say, okay, your vertical speed indicator will not show that 300 feet per minute rate of climb instantly. Okay, it will show that 300 feet per minute rate of climb after a lag of 2 to 3 seconds. This is called VSI lag. This happens because of inertia, right? So this happens because of inertia. Your vertical speed indicator takes some time, takes a moment to register the change in static pressure. That change in static pressure that happens when you change your pitch attitude from straight and level to a climbing attitude and begin your climb to the next level. So as you go to higher and higher altitudes, the pressure will decrease. Atmospheric pressure decreases as you go to higher altitudes. So this decrease or this change in static pressure is registered a bit late, okay, or after some time or after some lag by vertical speed indicator, and therefore the output, which is the indication shown by it, takes some moment, takes a few seconds, and therefore this error is called VSI lag, and it is reduced by two dashpots responding to acceleration, two springs by metallic strips. So correct answer is option alpha. VSI lag is reduced by accelerometer. Okay, so it's page on the last page. The instantaneous vertical speed indicator. Now this instantaneous vertical speed indicator is an advanced version of a normal conventional vertical speed indicator. A normal conventional vertical speed indicator will suffer from VSI lag error, but the instantaneous vertical speed indicator will not suffer from that because it uses accelerometer unit. It uses accelerometer unit in it, which eliminates this VSI lag error or at least curtails that error. Okay, next. If the choke in VSI becomes partly blocked, the VSI will be too high when climbing, VSI will be too low when descending, VSI will be too high when climbing or descending. So this is your vertical speed indicator back case, back of the instrument. So your vertical speed indicator works on the principle of sensing the change in static pressure. Okay, so it works only on static pressure, not pitot pressure. Very important point next. Now static pressure is fed to this capsule, aneroid capsule, directly from the static source. Okay, and static pressure is also fed to this instrument, to this back of the instrument via this choke, via this metering unit, also called choke, but at a restricted rate. That means this static pressure will enter this back of the instrument case at a restricted rate, at a reduced rate, okay, deliberately reduced rate. But it will enter this aneroid capsule at free flow rate. Okay, it is not restricted or it is not controlled. Directly it will enter the aneroid capsule. So now this static pressure enters this aneroid capsule at free rate. It enters the instrument at a restricted rate. Okay. So finally, the comparison is done between the change in the rate of static pressure. Okay. Now this rate at which this static pressure is fed to the instrument will be compared with the static pressure fed to the aneroid capsule. And this comparison will give us the rate of climb or rate of descent, how fast we are climbing or how fast we are descending. Now, if as given in the question, this choke or this metering unit through which the static pressure enters the instrument at a reduced rate, controlled rate, becomes partly blocked, not fully blocked, but partly blocked. What will happen? The rate at which static pressure is fed to this instrument will again become more restricted. It will become more restricted if the choke becomes partly blocked. Static pressure the static pressure will enter the instrument at more restricted rate. Okay, at a more restricted rate. So what will happen? So the comparison will happen between this restricted rate, more restricted rate, and the rate at which this static pressure is freely flowing to this aneroid capsule. So definitely the static pressure in the capsule will be much more than the static pressure out of the capsule, that is this instrument, because the outside this instrument, that is outside this capsule, this instrument is getting the static pressure at a very slow rate. So the difference between them will be huge, will be massive, and this will translate into a rate of climb or rate of descent which is too high. So even if you are climbing at 500 feet per minute, the VSI will show that you are climbing at 700 feet per minute. If you are descending at, let's say, 500 feet per minute, the VSI indicator will overread. It will show to you, or it will indicate that you are descending at 700 feet per minute, 800 feet per minute, whatever. So the correct answer here will be option Charlie. VSI indication will be too high, either when you are climbing, the be it climb or descent. Okay, next. If the pitot pipe becomes partly blocked. Now here they are talking about pitot pipe. Read the question carefully. Pitot pipe becoming blocked. So when pitot pipe becomes blocked, it affects only and only one instrument, which is your ASI indicator, airspeed indicator. The other two pressure instruments, vertical speed indicator and altimeter, work solely on static pressure, that is static ports. So VSI indication will overread when descending. It will be not affected. It won't be affected. VSI will overread or underread at all times. So correct answer is option Bravo. Whatever happens to pitot tube, vertical speed indicator and altimeter are not concerned with it. Okay. 54. Compressibility is most significant at low airspeeds, true airspeeds excess of 300 knots, true airspeed of 300 knots. So correct answer is option Bravo. So we have first indicated airspeed, which is corrected for position and pressure error, gives us calibrated airspeed, which when compensated for compressibility errors, which happens at very fast speeds, gives us equivalent airspeed, which when compensated for non-standard temperatures, gives us true airspeed, which when compensated for winds, headwinds or tailwinds, crosswinds, gives us ground speed, right? So compressibility happens or is most significant or concerning at speeds in excess of 300 knots. What will be the effect if the drain hole and pitot tapping in a pitot probe both get blocked while the static source remains open? So here you have aircraft, let's say. Okay, this is your aircraft, correct? And you have a static port on the side of the fuselage here, and then you have a pitot tube like this. You have a pitot tube like this. Now this pitot tube is blocked. It's blocked because of some dirt or whatever, and this drain hole through which the moisture, dirt gets out of the pitot tube is also blocked. That means entry in the pitot tube and exit from the pitot tube, both these ways are blocked. That means pitot tube is completely packed seal. So the only way through which pressure will be sent for the pressure instruments to function is the static port, because static port is completely open, it's functional. Pitot tube, since its entry is blocked as well as the drain hole exit is blocked, it is packed, which means outside pitot pressure, which is a combination of dynamic pressure and static pressure, will not be registered and sent to the pitot tube. Okay, to the pitot tube. So now your ASI instrument, your airspeed indicator, right, has one pipeline for pitot pressure, correct? Pitot pressure, and the second one for static pressure. Your airspeed indicator works on both these pressures, right? So if the pitot pressure is blocked, the pitot tube is blocked, that means pitot pressure won't enter the airspeed indicator instrument. The only pressure that will enter it is your static pressure. Only pressure that will enter is your static pressure. That means indirectly the airspeed indicator will work only on the basis of static pressure, changes in static pressure. Now, next step, which or what are the pressure instrument works on static pressure alone? VSI and altimeter. But VSI works on the comparison of static pressures, that is rate of changes of static pressure in the capsule and outside the capsule. Whereas altimeter works on the static pressure, that's right, but it works only on the expansion or contraction of aneroid capsule. So in that manner, your airspeed indicator will also work like an altimeter. It will respond to changes in static pressure, which happens when aircraft changes its altitudes, vertical distances. So, if aircraft climbs, let's say if aircraft climbs from 5,000 feet to 10,000 feet, as it climbs, what happens to static pressure? Static pressure decreases. This decrease in static pressure is indicated by increase in altitude by your altimeter. Okay, right? So airspeed indicator will also behave like an altimeter. Altimeter will show an increase in altitude 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. Okay, the arrow, the pointer, okay, of the altimeter will show an increasing trend. Similarly, your airspeed indicator will also show an increasing trend. The arrow, the pointer of the airspeed indicator will also show an increasing trend, increasing values. You may be flying at a constant speed, constant calibrated airspeed, but still irrespective of that, the airspeed indicator pointer will show an increasing trend because altimeter is showing an increasing trend. Okay, so your airspeed indicator works like an altimeter. So the ASI will respond to changes in pressure altitude only. ASI won't respond at all. ASI will underread at all speeds. So correct answer is option alpha. It will respond to changes in pressure altitude like an altimeter. So if you are descending, you may descending at a constant calibrated airspeed of 100 knots, but your airspeed indicator will show a decreasing trend. It will show decreasing values, okay, continuously. So 100 knots, 90 knots, 80, 70, 60, so on and so forth. Okay, so even if you are descending at constant calibrated airspeed indicator will behave like an altimeter showing a decreasing trend. Constant weight irrespective of aircraft altitude or airfield altitude, let's say, aircraft always takes off at the same indicated airspeed or calibrated airspeed. Okay, there are more chances of calibrated airspeed being getting mentioned in the options. So select CAS. Okay, so whatever the weight of your aircraft. Okay, and whatever altitude you're operating from, mean sea level, 5,000 feet above sea level, 10,000 above sea level, 5,000 below sea level, whatever, your true airspeed of your aircraft will change, but the indicated airspeed, the speed shown by your aircraft instrument, will always remain the same. If the aircraft POH or manual tells you that aircraft takes off at, let's say, 55 knots calibrated airspeed, whatever altitude you are taking off from, aircraft will consistently take off from that same airspeed. 55 knots. Okay, your true airspeed will change depending on outside atmospheric conditions, temperature, pressure, humidity, but calibrated airspeed will remain the same. The takeoff calibrated airspeed will remain the same, but depending on outside conditions, warmer than ISA, colder than ISA, the time taken to achieve that takeoff calibrated airspeed will differ accordingly. Okay, but the value at which you will actually take off will remain the same. The time to achieve that value will change with differing to changing density altitude. Next, 57. Do watch my density altitude video lectures. I have made a playlist and uploaded that density altitude. There are two lectures in which I have explained this whole concept of density altitude in two parts and uploaded that to my channel. So do watch that video lecture, understand the theory, the applications, and after that I have also solved the questions related to density altitude, pressure altitude from Oxford Met Altimetry chapter, RK Bali DR elements of pressure chapter. So do watch those lectures also. So your concept will be further reinforced. Question 57. The calibrated airspeed obtained by applying indicated airspeed. So just now I mentioned or explained this. Indicated airspeed when corrected for position error, pressure error gives us calibrated airspeed, right? So the answer to this question is calibrated airspeed is obtained by applying to indicated airspeed what determining factor. So is that compressibility and density correction, instrument position pressure error correction, antenna compressibility correction. So the correct answer is option B. Calibrated airspeed is obtained by applying instrument error, position error, pressure error to indicated airspeed. VNO is the maximum speed. So this is your airspeed indicator. You have four different colors here: white, green, yellow, and red. Now this white arc is called flap operating range. It is called flap. It is called flap operating range. The lower limit of the flap operating range is VSO, like shown here. So VSO is nothing but, what is VSO? It is the stalling speed of your aircraft in landing configuration. Stalling speed of your aircraft in landing configuration. Flaps extended, landing gear extended, right? Next, the upper limit of this white arc flap operating range is VFE. Now what is VFE? VFE is flap extension speed. So this is the maximum speed at which you can extend your flap safely. Okay, and then the entire white arc is the operating range, speed range in which you can fly your aircraft with your flaps extended. Next, the green arc. This green arc is normal operating speeds. Normal operating speeds. So VS1, what is VS1 here? It's the stall speed of your aircraft in clean configuration. That means you're not using your landing gear. Landing gear is not extended, and flaps, you're not using flaps. Flaps are not extended. VNO. Next, the upper limit of this green arc is VNO. Now what is VNO? It is the maximum cruise speed or maximum normal operating speed. Next, if you want to exceed this VNO, which is the upper limit of green arc, and fly your aircraft in this yellow speed range, you can do that only, only and only if the air is calm and stationary. Air is calm, air is still. Okay, so that's why it's called cautionary range. So you have to exercise extreme caution when you are flying at this high speed. You can only fly at that speed, at that fast speed, if atmosphere is still calm. Okay, stable. So caution range. The lower limit of which is VNO, maximum cruising speed or normal operating speed, and the upper limit is VNE. Upper limit is VNE, which is the never exceed speed, which is the never exceed speed. Okay, so VNO is the maximum speed which must not be exceeded. That is VNE, not VNO, at which flight controls can be fully deflected. That is maneuvering speed, not to be exceeded except in still air and with caution. Yes. So option Charlie is the correct answer. For a constant calibrated airspeed and a level flight, a fall in ambient temperature or outside temperature will result in what kind of true airspeed? That means you're flying at constant altitude, let's say 10,000 feet. Okay, so initially you're flying in a warm air mass. Initially you're flying in a warm air mass, and then you suddenly enter a cold air mass. You enter a cold air mass. Right? So you're flying at constant altitude of 10,000. In warm air mass, let's say the temperatures are 30 degrees Celsius. In cold air mass, the temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. Okay, so you have entered an air mass where there is a fall in temperature. So 30 degrees Celsius fall into a lower temperature 20 degrees Celsius. You're flying at a constant calibrated airspeed. That means the calibrated airspeed here in warm air mass is, let's say, 200 knots, and you're flying at same calibrated airspeed of 200 knots in the cold air mass. What will be the TAS? Let's calculate the TAS in warm air mass and then calculate the true airspeed in cold air mass using CX3. And let's put the values. Outside air temperature first, 30 degrees Celsius warm air mass column. Make sure the unit is Celsius and not Fahrenheit. If you want to convert Fahrenheit into Celsius, press the convert unit button. Calibrated airspeed 200 knots, pressure altitude 10,000 feet. Right? So check the values again. Altitude 10,000, speed 200 knots, outside temperature 30 degrees Celsius. TAS 246. TAS 246. Now let's change the values. Right, let's write the new values. 10,000 feet same, CAS 200 knots same, temperature 20. So with a temperature of 20 Celsius, CAS 200, altitude 10,000. Check the values. 20 degrees Celsius outside temperature, when 200 knots, 10,000. So TAS is 242. TAS is 242. So what has happened? TAS has become so the TAS has changed from a value of 246 to a new value of 242. That means conclusion, TAS reduces. TAS reduces or decreases when you enter from a warm temperature air mass to a cold temperature air mass. Correct? So for a constant CAS and a level flight, a fall in ambient temperature will result in a lower true airspeed due to decrease in air density, lower true airspeed due to increase in air density. So TAS reduces, that's right. So it's either option alpha or option bravo. Now what happens when you enter from a warm air mass to a cold air mass? What happens to density? Now in a warm air mass, the density of air is less. In cold air mass, the density of air will be more. Right? In warm temperatures, warmer than ISA temperatures, air density decreases. That means outside air becomes thinner and thinner. But in cold air mass, density of air increases. That means air becomes thick. Okay. So correct answer here will be lower true airspeed due to increment in air density. Last question, question 60. When climbing at constant Mach number below the tropopause in ISA conditions, what will happen to calibrated airspeed? So let's say this is your air mass in which you are flying. This is the air mass in which you are flying. You are flying at constant Mach number. And the question has asks us what happens to calibrated airspeed. Now when you climb to higher and higher altitudes, atmospheric pressure decreases. Atmospheric pressure decreases. Your calibrated airspeed is only proportional to outside atmospheric pressure. What is calibrated airspeed? It is nothing but indicated airspeed shown on your airspeed indicator. Now, airspeed indicator is a pressure instrument which works or which functions basis your dynamic pressure. Okay, right? So your airspeed indicator gets its inputs from pitot tube, that is pitot pressure, or combination of static pressure and dynamic pressure, and it also gets its inputs from static port, which gives static pressure. So after all the calculations, the only variable that is left with the airspeed indicator is your dynamic pressure, the forward speed of your aircraft. And this dynamic pressure is converted into forward speed in terms of knots, right? So your indicated airspeed or calibrated airspeed depends on dynamic pressure, nothing but outside atmospheric pressure. Now, when your aircraft goes to higher and higher altitudes, this outside pressure goes on decreasing in value. If outside pressure goes on decreasing in value, the pressure registered by the pitot tube, the static port, the airspeed indicator, all the pressure instruments will also decrease. The registration of pressure will decrease. If pressure registered by the pressure instrument decreases, automatically the output will also decrease correspondingly. So the output or given by the airspeed indicator or the value shown by the airspeed indicator, the IAS, the indicated airspeed value, the calibrated airspeed value will also decrease. Okay. So the correct answer will be calibrated airspeed will decrease. Now here you are flying constant Mach number below tropopause. Now as you climb to higher altitudes again, up to tropopause, what happens? Atmospheric temperatures decreases at a lat state of 2 degrees Celsius per 1000 feet. So temperatures go on decreasing. Okay, but remember calibrated airspeed is not dependent on outside temperature. Temperatures may be decreasing with rises in altitude. It may be increasing with rise in altitude, stay constant, whatever. Your calibrated airspeed is only and only dependent on atmospheric pressure, whether you are flying in an inversion layer, isothermal layer, or an ISA air mass, ISA compliant atmosphere. So calibrated airspeed will decrease. That's it. So this ends a lecture. I hope you have understood all the 10 questions I did in my video lecture. If you have any doubts, questions, let me know in the comment box. I request you all to share this video lecture with your friends who are also preparing for many exams, different exams. Subscribe if you haven't yet and hit the like button if you have liked this video lecture. Best of luck. Don't miss my next lecture in which I will be answering and doing the next 10 questions. See you.